Hello and welcome to CT Vets Connect, the official podcast of the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm your host, Brian Scott Smith, and coming up in this edition, we find out what the staff at the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs has been up to since we last spoke with them, including events they attended during Memorial Day. Plus, we speak with two organizations with similar goals of getting veterans out and about and enjoying the natural world around them as a way to reconnect with themselves and each other. And we hear from two veterans who have gone on hikes with one of the organizations and find out what it did for them. But first, I sat down with Commissioner Welch of the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs to find out what he and his team have been doing and to get some updates on events that are coming up for veterans across the state soon and later this year, and other important news, including the PACT Act. Well, joining us, as always, is Commissioner Welch. Welcome back, as always, to the podcast. Give us a bit of an update, because I know that you and your team are always very busy. Of course, we've just had Memorial Day as well, so give us a bit of a recap.
Sure, Brian. So great to see you again. Thank you for spending some time with us today. It's been very busy the last few weeks. This last week in particular, we supported multiple Memorial Day events around the state of Connecticut. We started right here with our own healthcare facility to recognize the many combat veterans that are here, recognize their service, and we talked about those that have gone before us and made the ultimate sacrifice. That was on Thursday. On Friday, we also spoke with our veterans in the residential program, and Saturday, I was off to Lebanon, participating in a parade and making some remarks, followed by New Haven on Sunday, Old Saybrook on Monday, and then back up to our state veterans cemetery Monday afternoon. Lieutenant Governor was in attendance along with Senator Blumenthal and Mayor Florsheim. Very dignified service there. The rest of our team, they were out in Avon and Newington and a couple other locations. My takeaways, there's a lot of support for veterans, very patriotic, small town type ceremonies, tremendous turnouts.
I noticed there seemed to be even more media attention, it seemed like this year, and certainly there was a lot more coverage as well. So I think you're absolutely right. I think the focus, which is good to see, is that people are paying more attention, obviously, to the veterans in the country.
The last couple decades have been extremely difficult since the attacks of 9/11 and deploying our service members over to Iraq and Afghanistan and several other countries around the world. And, the wars continue on. What's going on with Russia and Ukraine and Israel and the Hamas and the antagonistic country of Iran and what Iran is doing. It's bringing a lot of attention to the sacrifices that have been made in support of the freedoms that we enjoy every day.
Just before we move on, just want to obviously clarify for the listeners, when you were talking about the dates back then, that was obviously the days leading up to the Memorial Day weekend. As you pointed out, every single day you had something and the team were obviously busy there. Let's also talk about another event that you were at fairly recently. It was to do with a guerrilla unit, which people are going to be thinking, what on earth is one of those? But very important. You were there with Senator Blumenthal. Explain to us what that was about.
Sure. So we were down in Middletown at the museum, which is an area of the Trees of Honor, recognizing our fallen from the global war on terrorism. And there was a special ceremony. There's a special guerrilla unit made up primarily of Laotians and Hmong soldiers. They were special operations soldiers trained by our CIA, and they operated along the borders of Vietnam, and their primary mission was to assist in the rescuing of our downed military pilots from the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Air Force. In addition to that, they provided a lot of critical military intelligence, and they helped thwart off a lot of attacks from the North Vietnamese. The sacrifices they made were countless. One estimate says 35,000 of those special guerrilla unit members were lost, those warriors, trying to assist us.
Great opportunity to finally commemorate, as you say, the sacrifice and also the service that they gave. How did it feel for you? Because I know that you gave a speech there.
It was pretty incredible to be amongst that organization. There were several members from Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut that were on the ground doing those special operations in Vietnam and on the borders. It would be fantastic to be able to have Connecticut and Middletown, Connecticut serve as the national memorial to recognize the service and sacrifice of that special guerrilla unit.
Let's also talk about some other things which obviously the department wants obviously veterans to know about. Ongoing cemetery expansion efforts, always a very important thing. We touched upon this in the very first podcast. Give us an update, if you would, on that.
It's huge. As we were standing out there looking out at the mass amount of graves that are there, we have between our facility across the street here in Rocky Hill and down there in Middletown, we have approximately 17,000 interred, and we are running out of space. We're down to the last 2,000 spaces being available. We're working very closely with several state agencies, in particular Department of Administrative Services, to negotiate some property procurement in that area. We hope to receive, the final feedback very soon. Once we get that feedback and we have that property procured, we'll move forward with the National Cemetery Administration to get some federal grant money to do the expansion the right way.
Another thing, of course, is the representation as well. Municipal vet representative training for the 169 towns that there are here in Connecticut. Tell us about that. That's coming up soon.
Consider this to be one of the most important things. To have a trained municipal vet representative in all 169 towns around Connecticut. That's the first person a veteran should be able to go to when they need to learn more about different potentially tax benefits in the area, employment opportunities as they transition from the military back to civilian world. Maybe they need food or they need housing or clothing. That it should be the first person that they go to. We will do training for those folks up here on campus in our Gold Star Memorial Auditorium on the 14th of June.
One thing, of course, to mention, we're not going to go deep into this because although the legislative session has finished, we will be doing in the next podcast an update on obviously things that happened there. But of course, the governor has recently signed into law for disabled veterans the ability to either pay reduced or no property tax. So that's an important thing. I think that veterans will like to know because, of course, that differs across every single town. And, of course, tying this into having that representative who would know, what the benefits are for that town. So, like you said, it is a very important thing to get these representatives obviously in place, isn't it?
Yes, and that particular bill focuses on a relatively small population of 100% service-connected disabled veterans that are permanently and totally disabled that are not employable.
Let's talk about the stand down. It's not until the 20th of September, but it's always good to get that advanced information out. And again, another very important event for the department. Give us the details on that, Commissioner.
Sure. We're hoping to have a couple thousand turnout. This is an annual event we've done for a few decades. It'll be on the 20th of September, which is a Friday. It will kick off officially at 9 o'clock at the following locations: Rocky Hill, Norwich, Bristol, Bridgeport, Danbury, and Stamford. We've added Stamford this year as a 6th location. A multitude of services will be provided: health screening, vaccinations. Department of Motor Vehicles will provide some services. There will be legal services from Connecticut Department of Legal Services, along with several other veteran organizations. The American Legion, Disabled Veterans of America, VFWs will be here. We've also been doing some coordination with Ocean State Job Lot, and they'll be providing winter coats at each one of those locations.
I know it sounds incredible, doesn't it, in September, already handing out winter coats, but things like that, again, so essential. Also, the PACT Act has hit a major milestone. Tell us about that.
That PACT Act, great piece of legislation providing benefits. VA is reporting now they just provided benefits to the millionth veteran, which this PACT Act expanded several different types of exposure, whether you deployed overseas or not, whether you were in combat or you served in the continental United States, on different training bases where toxins may have been present, whether it was water or radiation or different chemicals, defoliants, whatever the case may have been. So 1 million veterans are receiving that entitlement now, which ends up being billions of dollars paid directly to those veterans and families.
Which is amazing stuff, but again, still open to veterans. So point of mentioning it is, if you fall under this, to contact obviously the department.
Absolutely. If you've ever been injured or you suffered an illness during your military service, please get in touch with one of our veteran service officers from Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs, and they will sit down, interview you, and help you complete the application process to file for benefits.
Commissioner, thank you ever so much for that. Later in the podcast, we're going to be talking to two organisations and also some some veterans who have experienced what those two organisations do, and that is Open Doors Outdoors, which is based here in Connecticut, and Irreverent Warriors as well. I know that you have been a recipient of Irreverent Warriors and what they do. Talk to us about that, because it sounds like a fascinating organisation.
It really is. Irreverent Warriors was founded several years ago. It's now an international organization. They're all about getting veterans together that have shared mutual experiences. They add a lot of humor to their activities. One activity in particular I like to participate in is one of their foot marches. They're typically 22 kilometers long, and that's in recognition of the 22 suicides that we were experiencing with the veteran and service member community over the years. There's a lot of different turnouts, different outfits that members participating in wear. It attracts a lot of times a younger crowd. I like to hear what their issues are. As we're moving along, I try to cycle through the crowd and have some conversations. They stop 2 to 3 times throughout that 22 kilometers to give everybody a break. It's not a forced march. We're not racing or anything like that. And typically they'll break at a brewery or a restaurant, and they'll have lunch. And, it's just a great social environment to reconnect with people that you haven't seen sometimes in many, many years, as well as meeting new folk.
What did it mean to you when you actually did it? Because it's different, obviously, for everybody.
It is. The way many will describe it, and even the founder of the organization was a Marine who was really struggling with a lot of depression and PTSD and anxiety when he got back, and he was drinking a lot. And he's like, I've got to do something. And what is it? So he just grabbed a really heavy backpack and he put it on. He felt comfort from putting that backpack on, as the story goes, and he just started to walk. Some people saw him, started talking to him, and the crowd continued to build from there. For me, it's a way to connect. It almost reminds you of being back in boots, almost like you're getting ready to go on a patrol. You're putting all your equipment on, you're checking your equipment, and what's next in front of you.
As always, it's great to catch up with you, and we look forward to the next podcast. And thanks as always for your time, Commissioner.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Well, we just heard from the Commissioner about his thoughts on the non-profit Irreverent Warriors that helps bring veterans together to improve their mental health and prevent veteran suicide through humour and camaraderie. We'll also hear from another similar non-profit based here in Connecticut called Open Doors Outdoors that also helps to empower the mental well-being of veterans. And to round out the podcast, we'll hear from 2 veterans who have been on hikes with Open Doors to find out how it changed them and made them feel. Joining us on the podcast is Davey Edwards, founder and executive director of Open Doors Outdoors. Davey, tell us exactly what Open Doors Outdoors is.
We're a nonprofit. We were founded in 2018. Our mission is to take veterans, their families, and young people into the outdoors for reconnection, healthy activity, and healing. We do that through hiking, kayaking, snowshoeing, and UTV adventures.
That doesn't just happen here in Connecticut, though, does it? Don't you take them to other fabulous places as well?
Yeah, so we are primarily based out of Connecticut, but all through New England. We work with different veteran organizations, some up in Boston, some here locally, and we will meet these different organizations all through New England. We actually just did a fundraiser and bought a brand new 10-passenger van. We will pick people up, we'll drive them, and essentially we provide them with a guided adventure. Transportation is needed and a meal after that, and everything is 100% free to our participants.
What's your message to your fellow veterans, either about coming on something, your organization runs, or basically reconnecting, because it's so important?
It's hard talking to veterans about anything. If I was going to talk to anyone, I would talk to people that know a veteran that's struggling. And I would say, why don't you reach out to us, get to know us, and invite that veteran? When I first started Open Doors, I thought we were literally going to open the doors and these veterans were going to come flooding in. And it doesn't work like that. As veterans, we don't trust anyone. We don't believe anything's free. We don't think the food's going to be free. There's no way you're giving us a ride. What's the catch? You want my email. We just don't trust, so we don't go. To answer your question, I'd pass the message on. Hey, I've been there. I've been in that dark spot. But my children are really what drove me to get out of the darkness. Most veterans, they can't get out of that initial hole that they're in. You get stuck. And I was stuck. And my first wife at the time, she couldn't help. No one could help. And it wasn't until I was literally laying on the kitchen floor in a ball that I was like, I got to keep the kids moving. And that was it. Why we opened it up to veterans, their families, and young people is because the veterans don't have to come alone. Grab a friend, grab your brother. They're free. Everyone's free. The whole world can come. Everyone's free. We'll pay for everybody, but just come. Just come and talk to us. Call me personally. I meet with people. I buy them a coffee. We sit and we chat. It's why hikes are so important, is because that first mile or that first half an hour, when you're climbing that mountain, your body goes through stress and your body begins to shut down. You're breathing heavy. You get a headache and you're going through a shared stress with other individuals, much like the military. And that's what connects people, is that common shared stress. So when they do that, there's an instant connection. When you summit the mountain, there's the success. You have at least one small success, maybe you haven't had in a while. And then you're getting fed. And when we feed everybody, that's when people start chatting. It's a very planned thing. It sounds like we're just going hiking, but it's dialed down to the last second of how we're doing and how we're addressing people. And we don't talk about anything when we hike. We just are there. After about an hour, people start talking amongst themselves, but we don't ask questions. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know where you serve. I'm not here to ask you a question. I'm just here to take you hiking. Our mantra is the mountains do the work, and they do. The mountains really do open people's minds and their hearts and kind of get them to a point of vulnerability.
You do a variety of different types of adventures and hikes for various, obviously, levels of fitness, I'm guessing, etc., and for experience. One of the things that really drew my attention was the UTV adventures that you have, because obviously there are disabled veterans. So this organization is there for everybody.
It is so amazing because the vision was to impact disabled veterans. And I wrote a grant to the Hartford Foundation here in Hartford, and I wrote it for a grant so I could buy a UTV. I bought a UTV and, again, opened it up to disabled veterans that can't experience the outdoors as their able-bodied counterparts can. And I said, all right, let's go. Nobody came. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is terrible. Like, I really want to help. So there was a veteran in our organization that started off as a hiker and became a volunteer, and he had 2 autistic sons. And I said, listen, as I'm building this program, will you grab your sons? We'll put them in the UTV, and it'll help me learn how logistically, when we're working with disabled veterans, where are we going to pick them up? How are we going to work with them? Where are we going to go? And both boys had autism. One was nonverbal. The other one was on the spectrum. And so we put them in the UTV. One of the boys was in front. The nonverbal boy was in the back with the veteran father. And the nonverbal boy was really struggling. He didn't like it. He was getting very anxious. And my buddy was, this veteran was just like, just go. We'll figure it out. So I started the machine, and it was amazing. The sound and the vibrations instantly calmed the boy down. And the father was like, what's going on? Like, this is a miracle. So it turns out, unbeknownst to us, there's a thing called vibration therapy. So this vibration therapy impacted this young autistic boy and calmed him down and literally relaxed him. So naturally, we're like, oh my gosh. So we actually opened it up to Septo in Glastonbury, which is a special education PTO. And we started inviting all these families with autistic children. And it turned into a whole nother program by itself. And we bought a whole nother UTV. So now we have 2 UTVs, and we have a whole nother pillar of Open Doors serving the autistic community, as well as veterans that can't get out and hike as much or do these activities that may be too strenuous for them.
Tell us, any events coming up that you want to tell us about the veterans can participate in?
We have a very busy hiking schedule. The UTVs are open all the time. If you're a veteran, you want to get your son out, your daughter, whatever, all you do is you fill out the form on our website. It's called the Connect form, and you just go on, and I get a message. I reach out to you usually within that week, that work week, that 5-day period, and we schedule, and you just come in and ride with us. And the UTV program is so special because a veteran may not be as impressed with the UTV as his kids will, but it's a great way for us to get to know the veteran. Again, the UTVs are 100% free. Everything's free. We have a golf tournament on June 19th. That's a fundraiser for us. That's at Lyman Orchards in Middlefield. And that is coming up. And we have races and runs and CrossFit events. And a lot of it's listed on our website, opendoorsoutdoors.org.
Davey Edwards, founder and executive director of Open Doors Outdoors. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And let's talk now to Eric Schessel, who's the Connecticut coordinator for the international nonprofit Irreverent Warriors. Eric, good to have you on the podcast. Tell us about the mission of Irreverent Warriors.
So the mission of Irreverent Warriors is to bring veterans together using humor and camaraderie to improve mental health and prevent veteran suicide. We do this through active engagements throughout the year. Our main event that we put on every year is called the Silkies Hike. Every chapter of the organization hosts a Silkies Hike in their location, and it is meant to bring all of the veterans together in the area and even outside the area to provide them with an opportunity to have have fun, socialize, create their own networks, and be amongst like-minded people. They don't have any worries about the day. It's very, very laid back for them. We just want them to be able to come out and be amongst brothers and sisters and kind of create that family social network.
So this Silky Run you've just mentioned, is that coming up soon?
Yes. So it will be in September 21st down in Norwich. We'll be starting off at Veterans Rally Point with parking at Mohegan Sun Casino.
And tell us what's involved in a Silky Run, would you? Clearly, hiking is involved.
The hikes are anywhere from 8 to 10 miles in length. However, they are broken up into stops. You might go up to 2 miles in a clip, and then you'll be braking for about a half hour, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the stop and what's going on at that stop for socializing, games, food, all that sort of thing. We only walk at about 3 miles an hour at the max. So this is it's not an athletic event. A lot of us are no longer young and we're not doing marathons or anything like that these days. So this is mostly just a walk. You can come in shorts and a t-shirt if you want. There are people that show up in full-blown costumes. There's people obviously that we talk about wearing silkies and boots, and people also wear some of their plate carriers and backpacks and ruck tags and rucksacks and all that. So it's a big culmination of what the military and veteran community looks like when we all get together.
Share with us, if you would, an experience or a moment you had personally that made you feel that what you're doing is having a positive effect on veterans who take part.
Well, actually, it was just this past year. I had a new hiker who, after the event, came to me and told me that she absolutely loved it. A lot of times people they can be kind of put off because they think that the event is nothing more than just veterans, bro vets kind of coming together and telling the war stories and trying to out veteran one another. So that's kind of was what she had going in her mind. And when she was actually on the hike, she realized that that's not what this was at all. She had a great time. She made a lot of new friendships. And I know that it actually really helped her mentally to actually be there and experience what Irreverent Warriors is and what these events do and mean to our veterans and our veteran communities.
And what do you want veterans to take away from this when they hear this interview with you? What do you want them to know about Irreverent Warriors and why they should even do this?
So that's a deep question. I really want them to give it a shot. I know a lot of times our brothers and sisters are self-isolating and, they don't want to go out. Doesn't sound like fun. They're not going to have a good time. They're not going to make any friends. They're not going to make any connections. They're not going to know how to act. All I can say is come out and give it a try. Come as you are. Be yourself and just kind of let the walls down a little bit and have a good time. Promise that if you come out to a Silkies hike and you actually put in a little bit of effort to mingle with the other veterans that are there, you will have a good time and Irreverent Warriors will effectively change your life. Go to www.irreverentwarriors.com. There's a search function there where you can locate a hike by state and break it down because some states have multiple hikes in them. So you just have to click on the state and figure out when the next one is, what's closest to you, and go participate.
Eric, thanks for talking to us and sharing those insights into Irreverent Warriors.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Mark Marinaccio and Jim Valenti, welcome both to the podcast. Mark, thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
Jim, also, thanks for coming along as well.
I appreciate the invite. Thanks.
So we're talking about Open Doors Outdoors, which is a Connecticut-based organization. Mark, I'm going to kick off with you. They do these amazing events. Why did you like participating in the event with Open Doors Outdoors?
I've always enjoyed the outdoors. I've always been outdoors fishing and just being outdoors. I enjoyed it immensely. And having the opportunity to them coming here and getting us and going out onto these hikes with fellow veterans as a group, it kind of got me out of my comfort zone because a lot of my hiking I did alone and I wouldn't be with people. And this kind of got me into hiking with other people and cooperating with other people. And like Davey would say on a lot of our trips, we start together and we finish together. And that kind of brings back a lot of the military things that goals that we would try to accomplish in the military, working together as a team to accomplish something.
What would you say was your favourite part of the hike or your favourite hike? Because they're quite long, aren't they? I mean, we're not talking a quick walk down the road.
They seem to have the ability to judge people's ability to make a hike. Like, you won't be with a group of people that are way above your level of hiking. They seem to know to put certain groups of people together, like a lot of us older vets will go. And it's not a race. It's just out there. We're out there to enjoy ourselves. We usually bring a lunch with us. We stop. We have a lunch. We relax. It's not grueling. I do really enjoy the website because I get to see people that are trying to achieve goals that are much more than anything that I'm going to accomplish at 66. But it's also fun to watch them. Like when Dave went to Moab, I tracked him. You could track them on their race.
It sounds like it's a real good way for you to just reconnect, both virtually but also in person when you actually go on an event as well. Because, I mean, that's one of the things that vets don't always get the opportunity to do, is always to reconnect with one another.
Yeah, well, veterans are risk takers. Nobody's going to walk in somewhere and they're going to give you a piece of paper and say, you want to join up, you might die. Most people are going to say, no, that's not for me. I'll pass on that. Veterans are risk takers, and they like to challenge themselves as well. Well, you don't have a lot of opportunities being here to challenge yourself.
Jim, let's turn to you. You're residential supervisor here at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Talk to us about, obviously, your experience with Open Doors Outdoors and obviously what you get from it, as well as obviously the veterans.
I think it's twofold, probably threefold for me. First, I get to get outside and be a part of Davy's hikes. Second, I'm able to interact with the veterans, not in a work atmosphere. You know, we have professional boundaries at work, and when you're on these hikes, you can almost kind of let those go out the window. I can walk with Mark if Mark's a fast hiker, so I can get ahead and pace with him. Some of the slower hikers, if Davy's taken Mark's group, I can fall back. And the conversations that I have with those veterans without those boundaries are priceless, and you know, they pay off. You know, we see each other back at work and feel closer to them, so I'm able to be a part of their healing. And that third piece is that's me working. I get to take that time and be outdoors and still get paid to do it. And it's really, really rewarding. It really is. A couple weeks ago, we went on a hike that was rainy, and it was one of the better hikes. You know, you get the hikers that are really focused on hiking, not just being out there. And it's only like 3 hours we were back at the VA, and it was very good.
Is there one which was particularly like you enjoyed more than the other?
Absolutely. When Davey came here, it was pre-COVID. He came to pitch his company. So we set up a table. I was kind of like the point of contact, and we met. Initially, I didn't know what our clientele was going to be like for his type of hiking. Looked up his company, loved his mission, and I emailed him and said, you know, whether we get hikes off the ground with our clientele, I'd like to be a part of it, you know, maybe volunteer. Calls me a couple weeks later and asks me if I'd be interested in hiking Mount Whitney in California. Well, actually, he said Mount Whitney. I didn't know where it was. I said, is that Vermont? He said, no, it's in California. He gave me a rundown that he had a donor that he was going to get back with me whether the donor would approve the staff veteran going on this hike. And he called me back a couple of days later. He said, get ready. You know, it's all paid for. All I had to do was pay for my airfare, and then I got reimbursed as soon as I showed up, just so I have a little skin in the game. And we hiked Mount Whitney. It was him, I, and a woman, Cindy, who was actually the donor of the permits to hike Mount Whitney. And we spent like 5 days out in California, out in Utah. And what I remember from the hike the most is something that Davey hadn't done, but he said his goal was to get me to the summit. And if it didn't happen, we were all not, you know, no one was going to summit unless we all summited. And, you know, highest peak in the continental U.S. It's one of the hardest single-day hikes in America. And we went from a planned 2-day hike to just scrapping it the last minute, saying, let's do it in 1 day. And we took us 17 hours, and it changed my life. It really did. Incredible.
Those are life-altering moments, aren't they?
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. We did a little video, and, you know, we threw in Zion National Park, and no one throws in Zion. Zion is like its own trip, but we were able to hit Zion, too, and do some hikes there. But just challenging yourself. I was a hiker, but not that type of hiker, and I, behind the scenes, just kept training leading up to the hike, and we all summited.
I can see it in your eyes as you're talking to me. I mean, you're so like, it's almost like you're back there again as you're talking about it.
I think about it all the time. I actually have the short video on my computer, and sometimes, you know, every few months, I kind of click on it and just let it play. It's like 3 minutes long. And Davy's spirit, I've never seen him down. He's always got a positive energy. And whoever he brings on these hikes, I know Mark can attest to that. He brings different people usually on his hikes as volunteers, and they're wonderful.
Well, it sounds amazing. And like I said, it certainly has an effect on both of you. Mark, I'm going to give you the final word on this. For anybody out there listening who hasn't been on one of these hikes, what would you say to them as a note of encouragement?
The benefits of the hike are immense, from a better night's sleep than you would normally get to just grounding you. So things kind of bounce off you, the average everyday life things that might have bothered you the day before. You get out and you burn up a little energy, you move those muscles, and you get out there, and it changes your whole outlook and attitude towards other people, towards yourself, too. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. You feel better about yourself.
Well, Mark Marinaccio and Jim Valenti, both veterans. Thank you for your service, of course, most importantly. Thanks for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
And as a reminder that if you're interested in taking part in either organisation's events, whether you're able-bodied or have some form of disability, then reach out to them via their websites for details and events near you at opendoorsOutdoors.org or irreverentwarriors.com. That's all from this episode of CT Vets Connect. If you need help or guidance about services and resources that might be available to you, then please contact the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs on their main number, 860-616-3600, or via their website at ct.gov/DVA, or through Facebook at CT Veterans Affairs. And don't forget to tell us what you think about the podcast and stories you'd like to hear on future editions of CT Vets Connect. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thanks for listening.